Today we review Cruis'n Velocity on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Graphics Data and released 2001 exclusively in North America. It is coming from an arcade racing series, and that is also the style of this racing game. You drive in typical arcade racing styles through Las Vegas, Holland, Ireland, Alaska and the Mars. You do that in a freestyle mode where you choose a race and drive it, or in a kart mode with multiple races in a row. The game is saved by a password system. The presentation of the style is, well, let's say ambitious. They went for a 3D style, and I would say they failed with that. The game does have a 3D-like look, but it's looking very bad. Everything is pixelated and feels just unpleasant to look at. The different places feel very same. One time you're racing Las Vegas and the other time you're on the Mars. That should feel different from each other, but no, not really. There's also no background music during the races, just engine sounds. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The gameplay is way less ambitious than the presentation. It is a typical arcade-style racer. While they took less of a risk with that decision, they still didn't make the gameplay good. The game doesn't feel good to play. It is boring, and in such a racing game, the presentation is also a big part of the feeling of the gameplay, so the presentation drags down the gameplay rivet. Additionally, a password system is used. Why? I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is really not good. I admire that they tried to do it in such a 3D looking way, but somewhere in mid-development should have realized that it is not working well. It gives the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Today we review Duck Adventures on the original Game Boy. This game released 1993 in Asia. It is an unlicensed Game Boy game and was developed by Coleman, which is the company Sachen. Our first review of an original Game Boy game was Second Space, which was also an unlicensed Game Boy game made by Sachen. So around 100 reviews after Second Space, we can see if this game is better. You play a duck, who, apparently, is on the adventure of making elephants, rhinos and more go extinct. Every level consists of blocks and ladders and the animals are running around. Your task is now to slaughter them all, by destroying the floor under their feet and letting them fall to their deaths, so that you can take their meat. What a funny little duck. The presentation of the game is very simple. The levels just contain blocks, ladders and the enemies. The sprites look average at best and don't have many animations. Especially the falling down animation of the enemies looks weird. They can even float in the air until the floor is back. There is background music, but I kinda wish there wasn't, because it gets annoying quickly. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay gets repetitive very quickly too. The levels are all the same and there's no creativity needed. You can even just stay in one place and wait for the enemies to come if you are patient. The gameplay is working. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. Unless you really hate elephants, you won't have fun here. Sachen, for now 2 out of 2 games are bad. I hope if we ever find another one from you it will be better. I give the game overall 1 out of 5 points. Today we review Nicktoons, Attack of the Toybots on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Firemint and released 2007 in North America and the PAL regions. It uses a localized name based on the native language. This game released together with a bunch of other Nicktoons Attack of the Toybots games on different consoles like the PlayStation 2, Wii and the Nintendo DS. In this late GBA game you play as one of 5 characters: SpongeBob, Timmy Turner, Jimmy Neutron, Danny Phantom or Tech. Every character has some special ability. SpongeBob can go underwater, Jimmy Neutron can hack some machines, Danny Phantom phase through some special walls and so on. All characters play through the same 5 levels, one based on every world of the playable characters, and the different abilities open small root differences in the levels. The game looks okay. The first cutscene, which is just a few pictures with no animations, looks a bit weird. Sometimes the different characters look like they don't really belong in the picture and just got cutted in really bad. In-game the presentation is average, the sprites are fine, the backgrounds, while not overly complicated, are colorful and good looking. The sprites have some small special animations for falling down from too high and some idle animations. They are fine, but not impressive. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is very average too. It is your typical action platformer. The levels are not very creative and the differences between the characters is too small to be motivated to play through the game with multiple characters. At the end of every level is an evil toy version of one of the playable characters as the boss of the level. That, I think, is a bit boring. While there are a lot of enemies to fight, the fighting system itself is, with every character, very simple. No combo or anything like that, and the jumping system has the same problem. No climbing, nothing special. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is not bad, but also not good. It is a very average platformer that is not using its main mechanic, different characters from different worlds, very good. If you're a diehard Nickelodeon fan, you might have some fun with it, but I guess not. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Microsoft Pinball Arcade on the Game Boy Color. This game was developed by Sapphire and released 2001 in North America and the PAL regions. It is a pinball game which features 5 historical and famous pinball tables. The game looks and sounds great. The tables are close to their real-life originals, and unlike other pinball games, right Pinball Tycoon on GBA, the tables actually feel like a pinball table and not just like an image. The bumpers interact whenever they are hit, there are vibrations and impact effects, and the game manages to bring the tables to a small screen without making it confusing. The sound effects for hitting things are nice too and make everything feel impactful. There's also some good background music during the levels. The main menu on the other hand looks a bit too simple. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The gameplay on the other hand has some problems. The physics often feel a bit off. Additionally, the game can have a serious slowdown depending on the table. That can be quite annoying. It is hard to explain, but the gameplay just doesn't feel right. You cannot play around with the ball as much as you can do in other pinball games. I give the gameplay 2.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. I like the idea of historic pinball tables, and the game has a great presentation, but sadly the feeling during playing is not quite right. Mainly because of the physics. Still way ahead of Pinball Tycoon. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Rugrats Time Traveler on the Game Boy Color. This game was developed by Software Creations and released 1999 in North America and 2000 in the PAL regions. It is a platformer starring the Rugrats. The Rugrats got a time machine and go to different times and places to find toys or other characters. Maybe the story makes more sense to people that are more into the Rugrats lore, but for me the story made not that much sense. The game is also not trying to explain the story too much. One little screen with text is all you get before level starts. In the levels you need to find some specific item or items and go after that to the time machine. The game is saved by a password system. The game looks quite good. The characters have big, good recognizable sprites with different animations for special actions like driving in a minecart. Everything is colorful and the backgrounds are looking good too. The enemies on the other hand can look a bit too pixelated, and sometimes it is hard to see them, especially their projectiles can be hard to spot. The background music is nice and changes based on the setting of the level. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay on the other hand is a real problem in that game. It is a platformer with a lot of enemies, but no attack. You don't have any attack or way to deal with the opponents. You can try to jump over them, but that's it. If they hit you, you lose one of your items that you, depending on the level, might need, and that item respawns at its original location. That is such a shitty system, I have no idea who thought of that. You can get hit at the end of the level and the item that respawns is at the beginning. So you need to go all the way back, but on the way you will get hit by more enemies because you cannot kill them, and so you need to find that items again. When playing that game I actually feel like a time traveler because I always feel like I picked up that item before already. So in a way the gameplay is representing the time traveler story of the game. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. They made a platformer in which you really don't want to get hit by an enemy, filled set with a lot of enemies and no way to deal with them. Genius. I give the game 2.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Navy Blue 98 on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Joust Corporation and released in 1998 exclusively in Japan. It is a battleship game. That is actually the second battleship game on the original Game Boy that we review. I'm curious to see how much more we find. The game has a nice title screen with some good background music and even a start cutscene. Besides that, the game looks like Battleship looks. The whole presentation is extremely close to the Battleship game that we played before, Review 65, Battleship, or in Japan known as Kaizen game Navy Blue. Here's a little comparison. While the games look nearly identical, between them are 9 years. That is like the difference between GTA San Andreas and GTA 5. I know it is the same platform as the other Battleship game, but still, it is a bit disappointing. I give the presentation, considering it is a very late Game Boy game, 2.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is Battleship. There's a story mode this time, and you have some credits. You can choose what boats you want to take, and you can use the credits to buy different special moves to use during the game. Besides that, there is not much more to say. It works like intended. It is Battleship, so yeah. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a Battleship game with some more features than the one we reviewed last time, but it is only in Japanese and it is not much difference. 9 years later. If you really want to play Battleship on the Game Boy, this might be for you, but for the rest, here's nothing but Battleship. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today review K1 Pocket Grand Prix on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Daft and released 2002 exclusively in Japan. It is a fighting kickboxing game in which you play mostly real kickboxers. You fight through an arcade mode, tournaments, team or single matches. While the game is in no way a kickboxing simulation, it uses a more realistic fighting system than Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. The only special move is a mode in which your attack gets faster and stronger for the cost of more endurance. The presentation of the game is a mixed bag. I like the style of the character sprites. They are resembling the original fighters, but are stylized in a good way. The animations look clean and the hits feel impactful. The game doesn't take itself too serious, and that in a good way. Everything besides the character sprites is below average. The backgrounds, which can be very good looking in fighting games, are extremely bad. They are mostly just pictures and not even very good ones. The game is even going in a more varied style with the backgrounds, not only sports arenas. But it doesn't look like they put any effort into the backgrounds. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is feeling fine. The game is using a health bar and an endurance bar. The endurance bar gets reduced from taking hits, but also from attacking. It regenerates quickly, but if it goes to 0 you fall down. If that happens 3 times in a round, you are out. The health bar is just going down from taking hits. If the health bar gets to 0, you are directly KO. The fighting system works good, but it's not very complex. There are no big combinations or anything like that, and while having the 2 different bars is a good addition, it is not adding the needed depth for the game. Additionally, it is very easy to win against the AI by just spamming the same move over and over. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a fine fighting game, but both presentation and gameplay are too average. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Space Knight Cosmo Blue and Space Knight Cosmo Red on the Game Boy Color. These 2 games are basically the same game, different versions, with minor differences, like in the Pokemon games for example. They were developed by Imagineer and released 2001 exclusively in Japan. You are a member of the ISNA and you save the worlds, I guess, together with companions that you recruit on the way. While that might sound like a Final Fantasy kind of game, it is actually very close to Pokemon. The companions that you collect are like wild Pokemon that you capture, just that they're not an animal equivalent, but more like normal people. Which also means that you beat up millions of people to grand levels. Well, I'm sure they all deserved it. I'm also not sure what's the difference between the people in the city that we don't beat up but buy things from, and the people out of the city that we fight and recruit. Let's not think too much about it. The presentation of the game is great. The whole game is using one theme, which is space. Everything is really aligned to that theme, especially the UI, which in the most games of the time is just some easy menus, is completely designed around the theme and looks awesome. The music is great and the sprites change the perspective between overworld sprites and more detailed sprites seamlessly while fighting. That looks great and is way ahead of the presentation of the clear inspiration, Pokemon. The background music sounds good too, and there's even some small start cutscene. The only thing that is a bit disappointing is the look of the overworld outside of the cities. That looks a bit too empty. I give the presentation 4.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is very Pokemon-like. Like I already said, in this game you're not catching animal-like beings, but you're recruiting people-like beings. So people fight against other people, and the first fighter you get is yourself. Besides that, you run around, grind levels and recruit aliens to solve the problems of multiple planets. Unlike Pokemon, the overworld in this game are different planets. They are not connected but can be visited using a spaceship. I like the connected overworld a bit more. Besides that, it uses a great gameplay system. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Just if you speak Japanese. Sadly, there's no translation patch for the game and the game is very text heavy. Without speaking Japanese, it gets hard to know where to go and what to do. I'm looking forward to replay the game if a translation patch gets released somewhere. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Today we review Arcade Classic number 4, Defender and Joust on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Williams and released 1995 in North America and the PAL regions. It is a collection of 2 arcade game classics, Defender from 1981 and Joust from 1982. In Defender you play a spaceship that destroys aliens while defending people from getting abducted. And in Joust you play a knight on a flying ostrich, destroying other knights on flying ostriches by hitting them with a lance. In both games you survive waves of enemies, while the game gets harder every wave to get the best high score. The presentation is very simple. The game is using a cool main menu, with the 2 arcade machines standing next to each other to select the game, but sadly there's no background music at all. Besides the main menu you have the 2 games, and they look okay. I compared them with the original arcade machines, and they are looking very similar to that. So that's how it should be, but the games are not looking so impressive to begin with. I give the presentation 2.5 out of 5 points. Judging the gameplay is a bit hard for me, since I don't know how they played on the original hardware, so I have to judge the games in the versions that I have. The controls work fine, but the games are very simple. Like most arcade games, they have a simple game loop. While some games manage to get addicting by getting more and more challenging, this games couldn't do that for me, at least not on the Game Boy. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. If you have nostalgia for that arcade classic, that might be something for you, but besides that, the games are really not worth playing today. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Today we review Meet the Robinsons on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Climax and released 2007 on the Game Boy Advance. This, very late, GBA game is based on the Disney animation movie Meet the Robinsons. The game uses a localized name based on the native language and is a combination out of a platformer and top-view puzzler. Depending on the level you play Lewis in a top-view perspective or Wilbur in a typical platformer perspective. I've never seen the movie, so I have no nostalgia about the characters. The presentation of the game is okay. The player sprites look good, but the level design looks a bit too simple. Objects are repeating themselves quickly and there's not much variation in the levels. The cutscenes look like they're ripped from the movie and are just images with a lot of dialogue on every image. The music is okay, but also not more. I give the presentation 2.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is also very average. In every level you need to find some stuff. Sometimes parts to build a certain invention, sometimes you need to find people to save them. So the most levels are not directly linear, but more exploration based. The controls work fine. The abilities you have in the game are very basic. The puzzles are mainly pushing blocks, and the platformer parts are also nothing creative. While the game is about inventors, you don't need much creativity to solve it. I give the gameplay 2.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is an average puzzler game that has nothing special. Especially considering the late release date, that is very disappointing. I give the game overall 2.5 out of 5 points. Today we review RPG Tsukuru Advance on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Enterbrain and released 2003 exclusively in Japan. It is a RPG maker game, so it is not really a game but more a game to create your own RPG on the Game Boy Advance. You start in an already existing game world and you can add and delete all kind of objects and characters there to make it your own RPG. Additionally, the game comes with some pre-made RPGs included that show off what is possible with the maker. The presentation of the game is good. Everything is colorful and cute. The objects you can spawn look good, but there's not much variation. Maybe there are sub-menus you can open or you can unlock more things, but from what I have seen the variation is quite limited. While the game looks fine, it is also not looking very impressive. The most assets look standard and very generic, which makes sense for what the game is about, but still, not impressed. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. Judging the gameplay is very hard, since the game is about making your own game. Additionally, the game is in Japanese and there were way too many texts to translate everything good. I like the concept of the game. Creating your own game is very cool. I had the feeling that the variety could be bigger in objects etc, but it could be that I just didn't know how to get to other things. Since I don't know it better, I give the gameplay 3.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. I think there are better alternatives out there, especially since you cannot share your creation besides with a link cable. Maybe if you speak Japanese and you have other friends with that game to share your creations, it can be fun, but I don't think the scenario happens too often, 20 years after the release of the game. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. Today we review The Wild Thornberrys, Rambler on the Game Boy Color. This game was developed by Vicarious Visions and released 2000 exclusively in North America. The game is about the Nickelodeon series The Wild Thornberrys. The Thornberrys try to win a documentary award and need to do different tasks all over the world to get it. It is a collection of 6 minigames, all starring a different family member, but a mostly same playstyle. In every game you need to collect a certain amount of items. The perspective and controls can change slightly from game to game, but the principle is always the same. The game looks okay, the sprites of the characters are good and I can recognize them. The backgrounds are also mostly fine. There's also background music in the levels. Sadly, the cutscenes before a level are just a pixelated picture with a bit of dialogue. Sometimes it is hard to see where you can climb up, especially in the Himalaya level, and the whole presentation of the bus driving level is awful. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is not very good. They made a collection of 6 minigames and were able to make them all suck. In every minigame you need to collect stuff, and it is just boring. The controls in the platformer levels feels off, especially the jump, and the bus driving level was beyond annoying. The engine sound will haunt me in my dreams. In the games it's just not much happening. You run around to find the things you're looking for, and that's the game. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. All the minigames suck. There's not a single one that is fun. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Today we review Kisekae Series 3, Kisekko Hamster on the Game Boy Color. This game was developed by Koyosha and released 2001 exclusively in Japan. The genre of the game is hard to describe. Maybe a life sim? Hard to say. You play a hamster, move around a playing board and you mainly buy things. It seems there's also a town that you can repopulate. Maybe. I didn't get to that feature. It feels like there should be minigames, but even when playing quite long I didn't see any. The sprites are cute and everything's colorful. There's some upbeat background music, like what you would expect for that kind of game. The backgrounds are quite simple, especially the game board, where most of the gameplay happens, is a bit too boring. The game uses a lot of still images to show shops and bought items. I give the presentation 2.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is... I don't know what the gameplay is. The game is just in Japanese and quite text heavy, so I'm not sure I understood everything. You play a hamster and you can visit multiple locations, but the main gameplay is happening on the game board, also called Ham Live. There you roll a dice and after that you buy some things from various shops. And that is all I've seen after a way too long time of playing that game. So I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. I don't know what you're looking for in that game, but I'm quite sure you won't find it. I give the game overall 1.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Beast Shooter Mezase Beast King on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Hudson Soft and released 2002 exclusively in Japan. It is a shooting game, but not like shooting things with a gun, but more like shooting your own little robot over a racing course. So the playstyle is more like a mini-golf game. You play some boy that buys a new robot and you race and battle against all kind of enemies with their little robots. Yeah. The presentation of the game is not so good. The overworld looks fine, it is colorful and the city the game plays in looks good. The interior of the buildings look fine too. The presentation of that part reminded me a bit of Pokemon, but it is using its own style. The background music is fine too. When we get to the real gameplay, it gets worse. The sprites in the races have a 3D-like look, but they don't look very good. They look extremely pixelated and just shitty. Whenever you use special moves, they show a close-up of your robot, which looks okay, but nothing more. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The gameplay is horrible. I had to do the starting race multiple times, since I lost. And the game is so slow and boring, it really feels like a bad mini-golf game. You choose a direction and the power, and after that you need to stop the bar in the middle to make the hit like you planned it. The bar is going quite fast from left to right, and the part to stop it can be different sizes. The game is boring, slow, and I hated it. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It feels like a game that promotes some kind of physical toy, because I could imagine a physical version that could be fun. But this digital version is no fun. I give the game overall 1.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Hunter x Hunter Minna Tomodachi Daisakusen on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Konami and released 2003 exclusively in Japan. It is unexpected from the Hunter x Hunter franchise, an Animal Crossing kind of game. You run around an island, remove trash, buy decorations and make the island more beautiful while interacting with characters from Hunter x Hunter. The most outstanding features are voice lines. The characters from the series actually have voice lines in the dialogue. That is rare for GBA games. The game looks fine. It is a typical Harvest Moon graphic style. The music is relaxed and sets the right atmosphere for that kind of game. The sprites look good, but not more than good. And the backgrounds like the city are looking nice too. The whole presentation is good, but not too special, besides the voice lines. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is very Animal Crossing-like, which would be a good thing, but some quality of life features are missing. Whenever you want to do something, you need to take the tool from the menu, and the animations are quite slow too. Everything is slow, which makes sense for that kind of game, and it might feel relaxing for some people, but I don't have the patience for that. I was also missing a bit direction in what to do. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. If you're a hardcore fan of Animal Crossing-like games and the Hunter x Hunter franchise, you might find the very specific niche you're looking for. But I don't think the game is worth playing for the rest. I don't really understand why they used the Hunter x Hunter franchise for that game, but I'm sure they had their reasons. I give the game overall 2.5 out of 5 points. Today we review the two games Looney Tunes Collector Alert and Looney Tunes Collector Marvin Strikes Back on the Game Boy Color. Looney Tunes Collector Alert was the first game released 2000 in North America and the PAL regions and 2001 in Japan. The sequel, Looney Tunes Collector Marvin Strikes Back, released a few months later, also in 2000s, but just in North America and the PAL regions. The games are nearly identical, just the playable characters, and not even all, are different. The sequel feels like a ROM hack to the first game, which kinda feels like getting scammed, but okay. The games are Legend of Zelda-like action-adventure games, in which you run around as Bugs Bunny or Marvin and collect different Looney Tunes characters with special abilities. The characters do what the items do in Zelda games and open new route possibilities with their abilities, like swimming. Your goal in the game is to collect all needed objects that are scattered everywhere in the game world. The game looks fine, the sprites are colorful and it is good recognizable what character it is. There's even an intro cutscene which looks quite cool. The background music is fine, the game world itself looks a bit too easy and the assets are repeating quickly. Sometimes it is hard to see where you are if you're jumping in the air with Bugs Bunny. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The games are very much like the Legend of Zelda games, but I'm missing the clever dungeon designs here. The Looney Tunes Collector games don't have much puzzles. The most things you do are fetch quests and just finding objects. Every character has just one ability which opens up routes. They're just like the items. The game is fine, but also not more. There is a lot of running around and backtracking. You can put one of the items on the B button, which is a nice feature. I give the gameplay 3.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the games? No. It is a Legend of Zelda clone, but it's not catching the clever design of the Legend of Zelda games. And the first and second Looney Tunes Collector games are so alike, you really feel like it's a scam. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Sonic Advance on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Sonic Team and released 2001. It is a typical 2D Sonic game which you play through different levels with one of 4 characters: Sonic, Tails, Knuckles or Amy. Every character has their own moveset and with that at least a little bit different playstyle. No matter what character you play, you go through the same levels. The game looks quite nice. The sprites are good and detailed. Everything is very colorful. The backgrounds are simple but doing a good job. I also like the designs of the enemies. The whole presentation of the game is exactly what you would expect from a Sonic 2D game. The sounds, the graphic, everything is classical Sonic. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. Just like the presentation is all Sonic, the gameplay is all Sonic too. You run around the levels, you get happy when you're fast and sad when you're slow. The variety through the different characters is nice, but not every character feels good. The levels are clearly designed with Sonic in mind. Tails and Knuckles still work fine, but especially Amy feels a bit off. The game also includes some multiplayer options, time trials and a minigame called Tiny Chow Garden. So the variety is great. The gameplay is classical Sonic with all the typical Sonic fun and frustration. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes, that is Sonic with some additional variety. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Today we review Denki Blocks on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Rage Software and released 2001. It is a puzzle game which you move around colorful blocks trying to connect them. Once connected, the blocks cannot disconnect again and you need to live with a bigger shape. The levels can have different objectives, like connecting all the blocks in the quickest time, the least moves, or in specific shapes. The whole game presentation is very colorful and cute. And childish. The graphics are, like it is common for such a puzzle game, very easy. The backgrounds and characters are simple and cartoony. They can look a bit cheap, but they're doing their job. The music is also very generic puzzle music. The tournament mode, which is the main mode, has a few cutscenes in which you meet the character. The level selection are pictures that get revealed step for step. So they put some effort into the presentation, but the focus is clearly on the gameplay. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is great. The principle of the puzzle is very easy. All blocks move the same time whenever you press a direction. So you need to figure out ways to block certain blocks to make the shapes or connections that you want to do, without making the puzzle impossible with 2 big blocks. The puzzles in the tournament mode get quickly complicated, especially if you want to do specific shapes, which is a special objective in the tournament mode, or making the puzzles in the least moves. I give the gameplay 4.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. It is a great puzzler with a great concept and a good execution. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Today we review Cesti to Meigurumi-tachi no Mahou no Bouken Kisekko Gurumii on the Game Boy Advance. This game with the way too long title was developed by MTO and released 2003 exclusively in Japan. In the game you play a young girl that is learning how to sew and how to make clothes. For that you run around the village, collect seeds for flowers and cotton, and you plant, harvest and use it to make your clothes. I would call the presentation cute. Way too much cute. The game is colorful and the game will use a typical Harvest Moon JRPG style. The overworld looks okay, but sometimes the objects and the backgrounds of the map looks like they're not fitting perfectly together. Especially the buildings look more like a background painting and not like a real object in the game world. The characters are all extremely anime-like and very kawaii. Of some important characters you get close-ups when you meet them for the first time. That is also looking very cute. Since the game is about clothes, you can dress your characters in different clothings and select the sorting of the layers. I give the presentation 3 out of 5 points. The gameplay is exhausting. I played the game for too long and not much happened. The game is very linear with a day structure. You need to fulfill all tasks for the day to be able to go to the next day. So it is not a sandbox-like game. You are very limited in your decisions what to do. Every day starts with a way too long dialogue scene, which can take, with skipping the most dialogue, up to 5 minutes. The gameplay itself is just running around and getting items. It is so boring. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. You just have a million dialogues and nearly zero gameplay. Additionally, a game in which you dress and undress a child is just wrong. I guess the target audience were young girls, but playing that game today as an adult, please don't do that. I give the game overall 2.5 out of 5 points. Today we review the Sims Bustin Out on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Mezase and released 2003 in North America and the PAL regions. It uses a localized name based on the native language. The Sims Bustin Out released for many consoles at the same time, and while the versions of Xbox, PlayStation 2 and GameCube had nearly no differences, the Game Boy Advance game is its own game and mostly just sharing the title with them. The game is not a sandbox game in which you control a family, but an adventure game in which you only control one sim and you have to fulfill different quests while earning money and decorate your home. A little disclaimer before the review. I love this game and I played it a lot when I was younger. My nostalgia is strong with this one, so I'm not objective but completely biased in favor of the game. Luckily, the game is great. The presentation of the game is quite good. You can create your own sim, but the choices are limited. You can choose a gender, haircut and the color of the clothes. The game world is shown in an isometric view. The town the game plays in is looking great. My only issue with the town is that, while it is quite big, it also has a lot of empty spaces and big streets. Often you need a lot of screen transitions to get where you want to go. The game uses nice, sim-typical music. Some of the minigames could look better. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The gameplay is what makes the game great. You run around to do your quests, which are mainly fetching objects, talking to people or getting money, and you play minigames to earn money. There are 8 different minigames and with that quite some variety. The tasks of the game are designed in a good way. You always have the feeling of moving forward. The minigames have a good length to keep you entertained without annoying you. And the mostly optional mechanic of decorating your home, which upgrades from time to time in the story, is a lot of fun. The game is doing everything right to keep you playing. It is not the most deep or complicated playstyle, but it works and it is addicting. I give the gameplay 4 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. The game is so great. I played it quite long again already for the review and I'm not planning to stopping anytime soon. I might be biased and blinded by nostalgia, but even when replaying it, it is fun. I give the game overall 4.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Roland Garros French Open on the Game Boy Color. This game was developed by Visual Impact and released 2000 exclusively in the PAL regions. It is a tennis game in which you play different tennis tournaments against the AI. The game is looking surprisingly good. After I saw the cover, I was scared they will go for a realistic look. But no, the game is using a cartoony style that fits very well to the Game Boy Color. I like the colors that are used and the sprites of the players look good too. The courts have different style and a cute audience. They are not animated in any way, but the style looks good. There are not only sound effects but also background music during the matches. Different moves like backhand and forehand are looking the same, which is a bit confusing and there's no indication on how strong your punch is. Also the variation in chords and players could have been a bit higher. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The main gameplay is a bit confusing at first but feels good after getting used to it. You can hit the ball in a lot of different ways to make it go wherever you like. It is a bit hard to understand at first what's the difference between the A and B button, but once you understand it you can control the ball well. Sadly, the game is missing some variety. You can just play different tournaments and that's it. You always play a standard tournament tree and always 1v1. The only differences between the tournaments are the courts. That gives the gameplay 3.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. It is a surprisingly good tennis game. I was expecting way worse, but the missing variety makes it boring already after a few matches. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Charlotte's Web on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Backbone Entertainment and released 2006 in North America and the PAL regions. The game uses a localized name based on the native language. It is a platformer based on the movie Charlotte's Web from 2006. You play, mostly, the pig Wilbur. You run around the level, collect spider eggs and do various tasks, like hatching birds or collecting letters. The game uses a more realistic look for the graphic. The animals are not stylized but realistic, and the used colors are all not so highly saturated. The style looks good, and especially the animations of Wilbur are looking great. They added little clouds when Wilbur lands and a lot of little details. The backgrounds are fine but quite simple. There is background music everywhere and the sound effects are okay too. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is average. It is a typical platformer. You run around, you jump, you fight against enemies, mainly rats. They're not really puzzles, just sometimes levers that you need to pull to open the way. In some levels you just need to get to the end and in others you need to find some items before. Everything is standard. The movement feels fine, but the climbing mechanic, which I'm happy it exists at all, is not always working so good. And the platforms that are breaking when you stand on them are breaking a bit too quickly. In total, the gameplay is fine, but has nothing special. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is an okay platformer, but nothing special. I don't see any reason of playing that game nowadays. I give the game overall 3 out of 5 points. Today we review Pocket Pro Yakyuu on the Game Boy Color. This game was developed by Pixel and released 2000 exclusively in Japan. It is a baseball management game. You can play a team from the Japanese Pacific or Central League and try to win your way to the championship. The focus of the game are commands that you can give your players during the matches. You cannot play them directly, but you can tell them what kind of strategies they should use. The game has a very easy presentation. The menus look okay, but have also nothing special to them. There is some nice baseball-y music. The presentation of the matches is also very easy. The players move a bit around on the playing field, but it is done in the most simple way imaginable. The players all look the same, and the only differences between the teams are the colors of the hats. They have not many animation, and the sprites are nearly the most simple representation of humans possible. At least there is background music during the matches. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. During gameplay, not much is happening. You sit around and give commands from time to time, but I'm never sure if they really do something different because of my commands. The matches are also taking forever. It is boring to watch and boring to play. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is boring, and during watching the matches you really feel your life ticking away. I give the game overall 1.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Darkwing Duck on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Make Software and is a port of the NES version of the game. It released 1992 on the NES and then 1993 on the Game Boy. This game features the terror that flaps in the night, Darkwing Duck. It is a platform in which you play Darkwing Duck and you go through 7 levels, saving the city from criminals like Megavolt, the Liquidator and Steelbeak. The game looks great. Both Darkwing and the enemies have good looking sprites and animations. The backgrounds are mostly simple but good looking. They can be a bit dark, which makes sense if we look at the source material, but it can also make things hard to see. The game uses a lot of different enemy sprites, and at the end of the level is a cool looking boss. The game even has some nice start cutscene resembling the intro of the series, together with the intro music. At the beginning of every level you see the iconic "I am Darkwing Duck." Little details like this really show that the producer of the game knew the source material well. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. Gameplay wise, the game is a typical platformer. You run around the level, shoot the enemies and fight in the end against the boss. The game has a climbing, or more hanging, mechanic which works great. The enemies have not just a big variety in sprites, but also in attacks and ways to defeat them. Sometimes you need to wait for them to attack, or you need to attack a specific region of an enemy. That works all very good. On the negative side, there are some jumps that are very tight, enemies are respawning too quickly, and the game itself is a bit short with around 45 minutes. I give the gameplay 3.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Yes. It is worth the time it takes, and Darkwing Duck is great. I'm happy that the series got a good video game. Darkwing Duck deserves it. Today we review Scrabble on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Runecraft and released 2002 exclusively in the PAL regions. It is an official Scrabble game. You can play Scrabble in hot seat mode against other players or against the CPU. The game looks quite bad. I don't think that a Scrabble game needs much on the aspect of presentation, but still, more than this. The menu is made out of Scrabble blocks, which is a fine idea, but kind of hard to read because the Scrabble blocks are very pixelated. Besides that, the menus are simple. That can also be said about the in-game presentation, which feels like no person involved put any effort into it. It is just a game board, which is fine, but the screens to select the tiles to draw and to show the points of the players are just done with no effort. There's no background music during the game, and whenever the AI does something, they show that weird 3D model of someone thinking. I give the presentation 1 out of 5 points. Gameplay-wise is not much to say. It is Scrabble and it works in hot seat and against the CPU. I didn't see anything wrong with the basic gameplay, but also nothing that motivated me to play more. I give the gameplay 2.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It feels like it was made by some students as their last minute homework. No effort put in and just fulfills the minimum. It gives the game overall 1.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Cool Spot on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by NMS Software and released 1994 in North America and the PAL regions. This game released on different consoles like the Mega Drive, SNES, MS-DOS and of course on the Game Boy. It is a platformer in which you play Spot, the mascot of 7-Up, and you run around the levels and shoot crabs and dragonflies, while collecting points to get more cool. The whole presentation is very basic. The levels use easy backgrounds and the same 2 to 3 enemies a million times. The enemy sprites look okay, but not more. The most detailed one is the sprite of Spot, who has a good looking walking and jumping cycle, but not more. It also feels a bit like the game is running on low FPS, because it feels like the cycle just has a bit too less frames. Weirdly, there's no shooting animation at all, the projectiles just fly out of Spot. The only background music there is, which is a quickly repeating loop, is in the main menu. No music at all during the levels. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is just like the presentation. Very basic. The game is a standard platformer in which you need to run around and get a certain amount of points, to be cool enough of course. And afterwards you can finish the level by saving another spot, for example. You have a weapon that you can shoot in 8 different directions, which is quite useful. Sadly the game suffers from a serious slowdown when multiple enemies or projectiles are on the screen, and sometimes that prevents you from shooting. I give the gameplay 1.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It might be a cool spot, but it is not a cool game. It is a cheap advertisement game with, at least for the Game Boy version, not much effort in it. I give the game overall 1.5 out of 5 points. Today we reviewed Shou Majin Ayuden Wataru Metsoko Monster on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Alpha Unit and released 1997 exclusively in Japan. You see in this review the Super Game Boy versions that added colors and better music. In this game you play a boy or a girl that is capturing, or let's say adopting, animal-like beings in the wilderness to put them in bottles, to then take care of them by giving them food and letting them play out of their bottles. It is a Tamagotchi pet simulator kind of game. The game looks quite good and very cute. You can see your animals play in the different environments and gives them some food which makes them happy. The overworld is a selection screen and not a connected overworld. You can actually never really walk as your character or anything like that. The game is more a combination of different menus, but that menus are looking good. There are different NPC characters in the city you can talk to, and all the surroundings have some unique looks and little sprites. The animals all look very cute and there's nice background music everywhere. It gives the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is what you expect from a Tamagotchi-like game. You take care of your pets by feeding them, letting them play and so on. You can find new pets in the different areas and you can learn what your animal likes. For example, what is their favorite food or their favorite weather, and use that information to make them happy. I give the gameplay 3 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a cute virtual pet kind of game, but it's only in Japanese, making it harder to play, and I think there are better games like this out there. It is still not a bad game. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points. Today we review Lawnmower Man, on Japan known as Virtual Wars on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Sales Curve and released 1993 in the PAL regions and 1994 in Japan. The game is, at least in the PAL version, based on the movie The Lawnmower Man from 1992. This game with a weirdly unsettling cover is an action platformer in which you run around, shoot your enemies, and from time to time you go into a first person section in which you fly past obstacles. The game looks kind of shitty. The sprites are hard to recognize and the backgrounds of the levels are extremely easy. The projectiles of you and your enemy are also just some geometric shapes. The enemies are not only looking bad, they're always the same ones. Additionally, that first person sections of the game are just blocks. The levels look all very similar to each other. It gives the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is like the presentation. You can only shoot, crouch and jump. The shoot is fine, but just in one direction, and the jump sucks. Already in the first level, the platforms are exactly the height that you can jump, so you need to do a perfect jump to make it. The levels, or sections of levels, are all very short. You just run from one portal to the other. It sucks. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a basic and bad platformer with no redeeming features. This game released in the same year as The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening. Imagine you get that instead of Link's Awakening. That is a real horror. I give the game overall 1 out of 5 points. Today we review Puyo no Dungeon Room 2 on the Game Boy Color. This game was developed by Birthday and released 2000 exclusively in Japan. It is a dungeon crawler in which you go to dungeons all over the world to get deeper and deeper down while getting stronger. The game looks very cute. That begins already when booting up the game. There's a little animation for the title screen. The game uses a lot of still images for different characters that you can meet by opening doors. That images look quite good and use nice colors. The overworld on the other hand is looking easy, and to go between the villages you have a level select screen. The dungeons themselves are also more on the easy looking side, but the presentation is doing a good job. The fight scenes have enemy from a front view like most dungeon crawlers, but uses nice animations for the different attacks. The game also has some good background tracks. I give the presentation 4 out of 5 points. The gameplay I've seen was quite good and had the right level of complexity for a Game Boy Color game. You can visit different villages and they all have their own dungeons in which you can progress. In the beginning it's a bit difficult to figure out how strong the enemies in the dungeons are, especially because you go back to the main menu when you die and you need to load the game, which is a hard punishment. Still the fights are working good and having such a variety in dungeons is nice. The equipment system of the game looked very basic, but I also didn't play the whole game, so maybe it gets more complex when you progress. I give the gameplay 3.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Only if you can read Japanese. The game is very text heavy and always translating everything is a bit tedious. I think with a translation page the game would be great. Sadly there is no right now. I give the game overall 4 out of 5 points. Today we review Spot the Cool Adventure and McDonald Land on the original Game Boy. These two games about the mascots of big brands are actually one game with a sprite swap. The game was developed by Visual Concept and released 1992 in the PAL regions, 1993 in North America and 1994 in Japan. It is a platform on which you play Spot, who is on the everlasting quest of getting cooler, I guess. Or you play a random child that helped Ronald McDonald find his magic bag. The presentation of the game is simple. The levels are okay but are quite easy. The sprites of the enemies are mostly the same in both versions, so they are very generic and have not much to do with the overall branding of the game. Both the sprites of the enemies and the sprites of the playable characters are missing some animations to make them feel special. They just have the basics and that's it. The whole game feels a bit lifeless when playing. Besides the playable characters, the only differences between the games are the icon for points and not played levels. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. The gameplay is running to the end of the level. To defeat the enemies you can pick up blocks and throw them at the enemies. It works okay, but is not very interesting. The main problem in the gameplay is the basic movement. They're used to a movement that resembles the old Mario games. You speed up after walking a while, but here it just doesn't feel right and you start running really slow. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is a lazy advertisement game. They didn't even know what they're advertising, but they were sure they don't want to put effort in it. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Today we review Konshu no Mori no Daibuken on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Culture Brand, released 2005 exclusively in Japan. It is a game about collecting insects. That is the main thing you do. Running around and catching insects with your hand or your net to have them. From time to time you can play some minigames like swimming or card games. The presentation of the game is really bad. The overworld, in which you spend a lot of time, is just a collection of unanimated pictures in which you can run from left to right. The background pictures are also used multiple times, making navigating the overworld very difficult. The screen for insect catching and other minigames are not looking good either, and the insects are very pixelated. I give the presentation 1.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is very boring. The game follows a day cycle, so after a certain amount of in-game time, the day is over and the overworld kind of resets. The NPCs are changing their places, and the spots in which you can find insects get new ones. So every day you run around the same spots trying to catch insects in a bad and seemingly very random minigame. That's mostly it. That gives the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. It is boring and looking bad. Catching insects in the real life is for sure more interesting, but I wouldn't recommend that either. Poor insects. I give the game overall 1 out of 5 points. Today we review Hudson Best Collection Volume 6, Bouken Collection on the Game Boy Advance. This game was released 2006 exclusively in Japan as a collection of the Famicom and NES games Adventure Island 1, 2, 3 and 4. These games released between 1986 and 1994. In the Adventure Island games, you play Master Higgins who needs to save someone from their kidnappers. Mostly some girls, sometimes dinosaurs. To do that you run around, throw axes or jump on your skateboard to save the day. The game's adaptation of NES games, so the presentation of them is what you would expect. They look and sound like NES games. So you could say the games are faithful adaptations. They are not a remaster or remake in any way. Sadly, the screens can look a bit weird when moving. That might be a problem of me playing on an emulator for easier recording, but I've never seen that problem before. I give the presentation 2 out of 5 points. Since the games are in Hudson's Best Collection and spawned multiple sequels, I guess that they were successful. But I really don't see why. I thought the gameplay is very Mario-like, just in worse. You run around and throw your eggs, but the most enemies are very boring and the movement doesn't feel good. Even with 8 years before the first and last game of the collection, the problem somehow stayed. The fourth game is doing a different approach. The levels are less linear and you can discover more areas for yourself, but it still couldn't catch me. I give the gameplay 2 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. You need a lot of nostalgia for Adventure Island to like this collection. I give the game overall 2 out of 5 points. Today we review Paws and Claws, Best Friends, Dogs and Cats on the Game Boy Advance. This game was developed by Prix and released 2007 in North America and the PAL regions. It's a virtual pet kind of game in which you can take care of a dog or a cat. Just a little reminder of the timeline. The Nintendo DS released end of 2004 and Nintendogs released 2005. So this game was 2 years after Nintendogs. Of course it's an older platform, but still when they released it they knew of Nintendogs and still released it somehow. This game looks horrible. The whole presentation of it is like a bad PowerPoint presentation. A lot of the game are pixelated menus with text explaining things that are happening. The only moment you can see your pet is doing very bad looking minigames. You cannot see your pet running around your house or room and do things. Even in Cats for the Game Boy Color you can see your pet running around and do things. I give the presentation 0.5 out of 5 points. The gameplay is shifting different bars to the right. Your pet has different stats and needs and whenever you fulfill something the other bars empty a bit because of the pastime. For some things, like cleaning your pet, there are minigames. The gameplay in the minigames is press a button or some directional input, and that's it. It is hard to call it even gameplay. I give the gameplay 1 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? No. In a virtual pet kind of game, there's nothing more important than watching your pet run around and do things. But this is just not happening here. Everything's looking so bad that I have no idea where they thought, yes, that's a great game for the GBA, we're gonna release that in 2007. I give the game overall 0.5 out of 5 points. Today we review The Humans on the original Game Boy. This game was developed by Imagitech Design and released 1992 in North America and 1993 in the PAL regions. The game was originally published on the Amiga and later released on many platforms. We are looking at the Game Boy version. It is a puzzle game in which you control multiple cavemen to reach different goals like collecting some spear or protecting your precious idol. The presentation of the game is really charming. I like the sprites of the cavemen. The animations of the characters and the backgrounds of the levels are very simple, but they're doing their job. There's background music and other sound effects. The game already starts with a little cutscene which we can see the time the game plays in. I really like that. The presentation of the game is nothing too special, but for sure better than a lot of games on the original Game Boy. I give the presentation 3.5 out of 5 points. The puzzles in the different levels have a fine difficulty, and the basic gameplay is working great. In the most levels you need to get at least one human to the goal, and in later levels you get more and more tools that they can pick up to do different things. The most basic thing the humans can do is making a ladder for other humans out of themselves. The only real problem I have with the gameplay is sadly a big one. The game is very slow. It often feels like a drag to play, and after figuring out what to do it is annoying to walk so slowly, often with multiple characters the whole way. I give the gameplay 3.5 out of 5 points. Let's get to the important question. Would I recommend playing the game? Not really. It is a shame, but the low game speed is making me bored while playing the game. Other than that, it is a great puzzler. I give the game overall 3.5 out of 5 points.